welcome to A Drummer's Guide to the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician aside from actually playing your instrument, which we've kind of taken as a given basically. First things first, Happy New Year! It is currently the 2nd of January as I'm recording this. So we're officially in 2024. It's actually raining outside here. It's pretty grim, but I am so excited for this year and what is to come. And I thought that I would just talk you through how I set goals basically for my year. And I'm sure you know this by now. I'm so into like goal setting. I absolutely love it. I've done it for years. I think it's really useful to have something to kind of like focus on. I know people usually set New Year's resolutions, but they always seem a little bit short-sighted for me and a little bit flippant and so easy to break because there isn't really an end goal often. Like I'm trying to think of when I've set them in the past, but honestly, I can't remember. It would have been basic ones like going to the gym, but then it's like, yeah, but I don't know, it just doesn't work for my personality, basically. But I have found some things that do work, and me being me, I get a bit extreme with it, but I thought that I'd share with you my sort of multi-level process, if you like, in setting goals for the year or for longer. You know, sometimes I'm looking sort of 5 years into the future or whatever. I'm trying to keep that back a bit now. I'm trying to be a bit more sort of present and not necessarily short term, but I appreciate that things can change so drastically in such a short period of time. And I think if you have sort of long-term goals that are too long-term, often it's very easy to be veered off track. I think it's good to have a basic kind of idea of where you want to be, but also have an amount of flexibility as well in terms of that, because life is chaos and you don't know what's going to happen. If there's anything that 2023 has taught me, that is that. So, goal setting. It's one of my favourite things. So I'm just going to go through my exact process for any goal setting. It can be any time of year, but especially obviously sort of the week between Christmas and New Year's. It's kind of one of my favourite times of year, apart from January 1st. I love January 1st. But what I love about the sort of week between Christmas and New Year is that it's kind of like free time, like really free time. It's like you're getting away with it. This year I chose to spend a lot of it just driving, walking and just thinking, because for me momentum creates ideas. Just being in motion, there's something about it for me that really does something. I was also keeping up with my boxing and doing all that, so fitness wise I was still up. I was eating a fair bit of stuff over Christmas, but actually I didn't indulge as crazily as I have done in the past. Not by choice necessarily, it's just kind of how it happened. I still indulged, it was lovely. Best Christmas as well, oh my gosh, such a nice Christmas. And New Year's, it was just lovely, it was so good. So anyway, let's get back to this goal setting thing. So, the number one thing for me when I'm thinking about goals is to ask myself, like, what do I want my life to look like? So it's not about necessarily achieving kind of these isolated goals like I want X. It's more about, okay, if I achieved X, whatever that may be, what would that afford me like day to day? What would my day-to-day life look like? And the reason that I do that is because of what I've experienced in the past, where I've had goals and they've been exactly that, these solitary, isolated goals, which have been great, and I've aimed for them and I've got them. But what I haven't sort of thought about is all the other stuff that sits around that goal and how your life is affected. So for instance, as a kid, one of my biggest goals ever, like when I was 14, I remember so well, it was to be a professional drummer that was touring on the road, right? That is a completely reasonable goal, I think. Well, because I'm probably quite an extreme person. But so that was my goal. That was something that I achieved, and I continually achieved that. I started, so my first proper what I would call sort of professional gig, professional touring, you know, properly on the road, was in 2008 when I was 21, and I was doing the thing, and then I continued to do the thing for years. But what happened was, because I hadn't thought about, and in fairness, I didn't have experience, so I didn't know what the peripheral effects would be on the other areas of my life, if that makes sense. But once I did sort of realise that, I came to a point where I was doing the thing that I'd set out to do, and I'd been doing it for years, but I really wasn't happy, and I couldn't understand why, because to me, like, goal achievement was the number one thing for me. But as I say, I sort of found myself doing the thing, but being really unhappy about it. And I didn't understand why for so long. And it was only when my hand was forced in certain situations that I was given the chance basically to just step back and just go, oh, hold on, what do I actually want? Like, what do I want my day-to-day life to look like? And as it turns out, my day-to-day life, I feel like if you've been listening to more than one episode of this podcast, you'll know, like, I love food. I love cooking. Of course, I love playing. I love drumming. I love people. I love, like, connecting with people. I love, what else do I love? Walking, going for walks. Turns out I love boxing. Didn't know that was a thing until recently. Anyway, all this stuff adds up to a day-to-day lifestyle, basically. And, certain jobs that I will now take on, I take into account that I would be sacrificing my day-to-day life to do, say, a tour with XYZ. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I will, because I love touring and I love drumming and I love meeting new people and being out on the road. But it's also very good for me just to acknowledge that by saying yes to that, I'm also saying no to the lifestyle that I love living. Like, I love it so much. Like, the things that some people may find mundane, I just adore. And I don't know whether I've always been like that. I don't know whether it's just because I haven't really experienced that, because life has been so chaotic and just, on the road and all over the place. To have that kind of stability within myself, I really love it. I really, really love it. Being able to plan out my own day, not having someone else tell me where I need to be at what time, what time I have to stay up till, because I've got to do a gig, and the stage time is like 11 at night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not even going to be in bed till 2. And I love sleep. That's another thing. So anyway, that's kind of, when it comes to goal setting, that is my number one thing. It's like, right, what do I want the overall picture to look like? Like, what is the dream kind of day-to-day lifestyle? And as I say, there's a number of different things that factor into what I really want within my life. Like, generally speaking, as I say, I quite like a bit of variety here and there. So put me on a tour for a few months, great, I'll go do that, I'll love it, and then I'll come back to this sort of day-to-day life that I'm sort of working towards constantly and hopefully consistently. So that's the first thing that I would do. And in terms of areas to cover, back in the day, I would 100% I'd love to tell you it was 90% and 10% other stuff. It wasn't. It was 100% my career. And whilst there were a lot of benefits to that, obviously, other aspects of my life absolutely have suffered. They still continue to suffer. And I'm not saying I regret that. I'm not one for regrets. I'm happy with where I'm at right now as I sit here talking to you. Life isn't perfect, never will be. That's kind of the deal. But now I try to be more sort of purposeful in areas that I want to cover in terms of my day-to-day life, if that makes sense. So what does my career look like day to day? What does my health look like day to day? What about family? What about friends? What about finances? And then if you're like religious or spiritual, what does that look like? And just trying to cover all the bases in a sort of image of what a day-to-day mundane, if you like, a mundane day would look like in your life. And if you can make that something that is compelling and something that you enjoy, I feel like that's kind of it, isn't it? I feel like that's it. That's what I'm aiming for. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. You know what? There's no such thing as right and wrong, I don't think. It's just, I don't know. I really like this whole idea of thinking about, rather than these isolated goals, it's more like a lifestyle and a daily practice, if you like. So that's what I started out doing, basically. And then I broke down those kind of aspects of my day-to-day life into daily habits, basically, that I have to do. And now these things are the most boring things ever. They're things that I don't enjoy, but I know that they're with a bigger purpose of, like I say, this day-to-day being able to live a certain way. And honestly, so at the moment, my daily habits that are I find them either hard or I find them dull. I don't know if I find them dull. All right, hard. So the first thing I do so I get up and whatnot, have my coffee, have my breakfast, fine, that's fine. That's kind of easy stuff, so I don't even think about it because it's nice. It's a nice thing. But the first hard thing, and I choose to do all my hard things first thing because I know what I'm like. And basically, I used to do this with working out. I don't need to now, and I'll come on to that. But what I would do with working out is that I would do it first thing. And the reason was purely because it wasn't about there's this book called Eat That Frog, which is where you're meant to get your hardest thing out the way first. I'd love to tell you that was the reason. I'm going to get the hardest thing out the way first. No, it's not that. It's that my brain isn't quite engaged first thing in the morning. So I'm kind of tricking myself into doing stuff before my brain can start waking up and making excuses and going, oi, no, don't do that. Why don't you go do this? This is much more fun. What about that? You need to still go do that. And that will be much more fun than doing this. So I basically do it first thing before my brain can start chiming up, basically. So for me, the first things that I do is I do emails, which is no secret. I have spoken about it quite a few times on here. I am so bad at replying to emails. It's just volume versus the energy that I have to reply, because I'm not the person that replies to people with just like a one word answer or one sentence or very throwaway. I'm very connected to the people that I email and message and stuff, so I take time, and that does take time and energy. So I kind of like allocate, right, the first bit of my day I'm doing emails, then the next bit, another hard thing that I'm very bad at, and apologies if you're waiting for responses from me on either of these platforms, Instagram. So Instagram direct messages specifically, so I try to get on top of that. It's an endless thing. I feel like the volume is just getting higher of messages and I'm just getting slower, but I will get better the more that I do it. That's the other thing I definitely know. But it is working, just slowly, and I'm not a very patient person, I must say. So then straight after that, I do my 30 minutes day free playing. So just drumming, just stream of consciousness, like not even thinking about it. And again, that is something that is for myself. I count that as being something that's good for me mentally, obviously for my career, obviously for my drumming, fine, but almost spiritual as well. It's kind of like, I don't know, it centers me. And also I historically have not been great at doing things for the benefit of myself first before anyone else, and it's kind of been a practice in that of kind of like just going, no, my well-being is just as valuable as anyone else's, so therefore take the time, carve out the time for yourself, so go on, do the thing. So I've been doing that. The next thing on my list is doing my Open University work. So I'm doing a degree in psychology and counselling. It is hard. I am in my third year of 6. It is so hard. The level to which I'm being asked to work and study has jumped. It's okay because it's fascinating stuff. It's just very, very dense. So I'm making sure that I do that every day. And again, that's to do for me, that's to do with growth, that's to do with education. It's very important to me to always be learning and growing in some respect, sort of thing. But these first 4 things, they are by nature, I mean, maybe not the drumming sometimes, but by nature, they're fairly boring things. Like, they're not like compelling. The drumming thing maybe, but it's hard to get started for me, and that is the easiest thing to drop. So I have to, again, put it at the beginning of my day so that I then carry on through with it. And then I'm allowed to have lunch. This is the thing, I reward myself during my days. And then I get on with all the other stuff that I have to do sort of in the afternoon, like this podcast. So this is an afternoon thing. I've just had my lunch. I had to go and drop off a package as well. And so that's kind of like, that's the thing that I plan out first, is kind of the daily, boring, mundane habits that after about a week of doing them, you're going, oh God, this again? But it's when you get to that point, in my experience, that things start happening and momentum starts sort of like kicking in, and things start happening and you don't even realise why. And then I've looked back retrospectively and gone, oh, it's because I've been doing those boring things every day. That makes sense. So, and inevitably, like I say, it will kick in that it'll be like, oh, I can't be bothered to do this again, or there'll be something. So the other thing that I do with these sort of like daily goals, these daily habits, is I have created a spreadsheet essentially with all these daily habits that I want to keep doing. and then trying to think up or anticipate the friction points that are going to come up, whether that's like laziness, of which I think we're all sort of like guilty of that, whether it's overwhelm, whether it's money constraints, whether it's time restraints, and then putting in a solution next to it of just like, right, okay, if that happens, what am I going to do to try and mitigate that, basically? And I mean, it's going to be an ongoing list because I'm sure that things will come up. It's amazing how your brain makes up excuses for you to not do something. The brain is very good at that. It's arguably one of its best qualities, is that it is very good at talking you out of doing stuff. So rather than just going, right, fair enough, I've chosen to challenge it, basically. And the way that I've done that is sort of doing this spreadsheet, and it will be an ongoing process, like I say, an ongoing battle with myself of like, right, what's the newest friction point? Why didn't I practice today? Why didn't I do my free play? Why didn't I reply to my emails today? And just notice it, not be too sort of harsh on myself, and then kind of like try and find a solution so that it doesn't happen again. Basically, that's kind of it. The other rule that I've put in place with myself, that I'm kind of aiming for certain time periods. So for the moment, it's kind of like 30 minutes of emails, 30 minutes of Instagram, 30 minutes of free playing, 30 minutes of Open University, just as a starting point. However, I am under no illusion that some days I am so tired that I feel physically sick, and I know that the thought of doing 2 hours of stuff would literally just, debilitating, absolutely debilitating. It's just how I am, because I'm someone who hyper focuses, and I overdo it, and I wear myself out, and I know that. So I've put a clause in there for myself, which is basically, even if you do 1 minute, so if I do 1 minute, that counts. And it's not ideal, but it's better than no minutes, and it's more about developing the consistency of the habit rather than the volume of the habit, if that makes any sense to you. So that's kind of what I do in terms of my daily habits, and link it to what I want my day-to-day lifestyle to look like. And then we get onto the funner bits, and they're kind of like the bigger goals for the year. They're the shiny objects that I love so dearly, and that is what I sort of spend my afternoons doing, is focusing on those shinier, bigger goals, basically, that are a lot more fun. They can be a lot more overwhelming, but they're kind of exciting, if that makes sense. And again, I kind of structure my day in terms of rewards. So my reward for doing the boring stuff in the morning is that I get to do the fun stuff in the afternoon. And sometimes there's still boring stuff in the afternoon, so let's not get it twisted. But the intention is there, basically. And so what I do with my big goals is I kind of have like, right, by the end of the year, X, I want this to happen, I want to have done this, whatever it is. There's a few things that I've put on my list this year. I won't go into it because I'm quite protective over my goals, because they're very personal to me. But then what I'll do is I'll break them down into like monthly goals, so achievable months. So I know by the end of January I want to have done X, Y, and Z towards goals A, B, and C, if that makes sense. And just breaking them down as much as I can, and then moving on further than that, week to week, I can then look, right, what's my monthly goal? Okay, so this week I'm going to focus on this. Next week I'm going to focus on this, and kind of just, it's what I have read to know as chunking down. I actually hate the term chunking, only because it sounds like, what is it, blowing chunks? Is that the right term? Basically being sick. Don't like it. I don't like it, but that's what it is, chunking down goals. So that's kind of what I do. I have my bigger picture lifestyle. I have my daily boring routines that will afford me that lifestyle. I have my big shiny goals that are broken down into smaller steps, smaller monthly goals / smaller weekly goals. And then I will basically take all this information and I will put it onto a whiteboard in my office. It's not in here, it's not in the studio. It was before, but I seem to be in my office and see it more. So I prefer to have it somewhere that I'm going to see it more, so I can always have a visual of what I'm aiming towards, whether that's the bigger goals, whether that's the smaller steps. I've also written some of the like friction points on there. I've also written some ways to deal with it, and as well as a few other rules for myself, just to kind of like entice me and to motivate me. yeah, so just to have it all there in front of you and just see it as a visual. For me, I'm a very visual person, so it really, really helps with me. So, yes, and I then there's always more steps with me, isn't there? There's always more steps. The other thing that I will do is I've got a yearly wall planner, so it's the whole year on one calendar, and what I'll do is every time I do something towards any one of those goals, whether it's the daily habits, whether it's the bigger goals or whatever else, I have all these little stickers, this circular coloured stickers, and I will put a sticker with a colour that represents the area that I've done the thing in, so that I can visually see a representation. I did an episode recently called A Drummer's Guide to Gamification, and I sort of spoke about that there. So there's something about sort of, again, it's not just creating momentum, it's literally physically seeing it. For me as a visual person, if I can see the progress that I'm making, it just motivates me to keep going, and it makes me realize how much work I've done and just go, yeah, okay, cool. Like, wait, because, you know, inevitably you're gonna have moments where you're like, I'm knackered, you know, I don't feel like I've been doing anything, I don't feel like I've been making any progress. But if you can physically see, oh, look at all those stickers on that wall chart right now, I have been doing stuff and I will continue to do stuff. And if you sort of like look back retrospectively, where, like, let's say in March, I look back to the first day of January and I think about what I was doing in January and where I am in March, and just think, oh wow, that's I've gotten to that point because I've done all these daily things. I've covered all this ground, and yes, some days maybe it was only for a minute, but it's still a minute more than no minutes, so I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna just like roll with it. It kind of like makes sense to me. I don't know whether it makes sense to you, but again, these are things that I've sort of like built up over the years. I didn't just go on the 31st of December 2023, right, I'm gonna implement all these things. It's like, no, I've been doing all of these things for many years, but sort of like separately or building them up with each other or whatever else. So I don't know, it just kind of like, it really, really works for me. And then there's a bonus thing that I've started doing as of last year, I think, maybe the year before. And that is, I started it way back when, because I'm sure most people listening to this have heard of this, and it is creating a vision board. Now, most people talk about a vision board, they talk about one of those, you know, those cork boards, and you cut out pictures and you put it on this board with like pins and da-da-da-da-da. And I love that idea, it's lovely, and if it works for you, that's brilliant. However, to me, it doesn't really work, because it, again, will only be in one place in my house, and that doesn't work because I'm always running around. I'm on tour, and you know, I'm out and about, so it doesn't quite work for me. However, I tell you what is with me all the time, well, not all the time, most of the time. Well, there's two things. So one thing that's with me most of the time, and this is where I put it, is on my desktop, on my computer, on my laptop. So wherever I'm in the world, I've usually got my laptop with me to do work and whatnot. So every time I open my laptop, I will see that. And even if it's a subliminal thing, if anything, it's actually more powerful. So I basically create a desktop vision board that has images that represent all the bigger goals and the daily goals and just the general lifestyle that I want to have, so that it kind of like penetrates into me. And I've found that this works really, really well for me. As I say, as a visual person, I think it helps. If you want to go the extra mile, you can put it on your phone, I suppose. Although I've got to be honest with you, I'm quite embarrassed about my vision board, because people that don't get it are just like, okay. And I don't want to have that conversation, and it's very personal to me. I'm very much like the person. I don't want people, oh, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's this goal that I have, and because I need to feel strong about what I'm going for. I'll let them see the results. That's much better for me. Like, see the results, then ask me about it. It's fine. But whilst I'm working towards it, I need to be very focused. I don't need people giving their 2 cents. Even though it might be very, very valid, it might be very, very, like, coming from a great place, I need to have that single track, headstrong, stubborn mind, basically, because it's who I am, it's how I work best. Yes, it has its downsides, but it has massive upside as well, and it is definitely the way that I work best. But that's why I don't have it on my phone, so it doesn't start conversation. And in all honesty, I'll be completely honest with you, if say someone's coming into the studio to do a recording session, I will literally change my background just to some generic thing, just so that in case they see my background, I'm like, I just can't be bothered with like answering questions. I really can't. It's let me do my thing and then come ask me about it afterwards and I'll tell you about it. I'm telling you right now about it. You know, that's how I often will, as they say, manifest stuff. Is kind of, for me, seeing a visual of it and subliminally, I think really, really, really helps me. Just keeps me focused and I don't know. I just like it. I like it. It's not the one and only thing. Like I say, all these things work together because obviously there's no point having this kind of vision board or whatnot if you're not taking action towards it. You've got to be, well, in my opinion, in my experience, taking action on stuff is just the best way to get anywhere with anything. Like things don't fall in my lap. Not that I'm aware of. I do know people that things fall in their lap. It's hilarious. My sister is one of them. You wouldn't believe some of the things that happen to her. I love it. Every time I hear it, I'm like, how does this happen to you? Like, it's so hilarious. I'm like, this is brilliant. And obviously she works her butt off anyway, so she's always ready for it when it comes. But it's so fascinating to me when things just kind of line up, you know, and things happen. It's just, I don't know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. But anyway, I hope that gives you some insight into how I set my goals for any given year. And again, it doesn't have to be a December 31st, January 1st thing. For me, it can be the middle of the year and I decide, right, I'm going to pivot into this, you know. And again, it's sort of like things like COVID happening, you know, instantly. I was like, well, I've got to change all my goals because everything that I wanted to do was involving, you know, being in the world versus being at home. So I changed and I pivoted and it was great because, again, I just knew how to set goals to make things happen. And it made me feel like I could retain a little bit of control. Because obviously, look, life is chaotic and we all only have really the illusion of control. But hey, ignorance is bliss. I'm fine with it. Like, that's fine. The things that I can have some influence on, I will, and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm always going to try and work towards the most I can. Side note, this, as I said, I think I mentioned, this podcast is part of my goal this year. So my number one career goal this year is kind of pivoting more, like leaning more into helping more people, basically, and that's through this podcast, that's through mentoring and coaching. What I realised last year is that it fills me up in a way that I don't think anything else really has. I love watching people succeed. I love being able to help guide people or support people or give people accountability to what they want to do and achieve. And obviously I've got a fair bit of experience in various different areas in the music industry and elsewhere, and just being able to share that to help other people is it's been one of my favourite things that I've learnt about myself recently, and I'd like to do more of it. So hey, if you wanna do any mentoring with me, do reach out anytime. I'm here. You know where I am. So that's kind of my big career goal, which I will share with you for sure. And then in terms of like health and stuff, I'm just trying to. I got to a really great spot last year with health, and that's through taking up boxing in September. And also through the food that I'm eating, through basically meal prepping, which essentially is an excuse for me to cook. This is what I realized. I need to eat quicker than I cook because I cook too much. I don't eat enough. It's very, very upsetting. And yeah, so I'm trying to just maintain those things because I feel like I'm in a really great spot with that. I'm really happy with where I am with that. And then there's some home stuff, some home goals, some family life goals that I want to get to. But yeah, 2024 it's going to be an exciting year. Plus, 2, 4, and 8 are my favourite numbers. And because my brain is number wired, you got the 2 in there, you got the 4 in there, and you got the 2 plus the 2 plus the 4, which is the 8. I mean, it's meant to be my year. What can I tell you? I don't know what else to tell you. But yeah, anyway, right, I'm gonna head out. Again, I just wanted to say thank you again, to the lovely Patreon subscribers. You guys are the reason that I'm able to carry on doing this. I really, really appreciate you so much. We had the best hang over Christmas, like between Christmas and New Year, just hanging out. I'd love to tell you we were talking about music. We weren't. We were talking about food mostly. Obviously, it's what we always do, and just kind of catching up and seeing what everyone's been up to. It was the greatest joy. I absolutely adored it, and I will be doing more of those Patreon hangs more regularly, because it made me realise how much I miss you guys, man. I really miss you guys. If you're listening, you know who you are. And so I'll be doing those more often. And again, if you want to be part of that community and support, you can do that. So you can go to patreon.com/EmilyDrums. It's patreon.com/EmilyDrums. And if you would also like to share and subscribe to this podcast, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. Share it with your mates. People ask to leave reviews, don't they? If you want to do that, that would be awesome. I mean, it's up to you. Like, we've all got lots of stuff going on, so don't worry too much about it. But it would be lovely. I'd really appreciate it. But as I say, only if you get a chance. And anyway, I hope that 2024 is treating you well so far. And if you haven't done any goals, or if you're still sort of working on them, I hope that this has helped you in some way. And if not, then sorry. I will be continuing to try and find out best practices for goal setting and achievement and all of that, because I'm so fascinated by it. I'm so into it, the psychology of it, minimizing the failure of it and maximizing the successes, and just what works, and habits and triggers, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's just it's the best. It's so interesting. But anyway, right, I'm gonna love you and leave you, because I'm starting to go down another tangent that you don't need. You've already been listening to me for however long it's been. I don't even know. But I hope that you're keeping well wherever you are, whatever you're up to. Sending you lots and lots of love, and I will see you next time for another subject. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.
The